let's get to the crux of it all. If you don't know who I am, I'm Mary Jo Guinchard, hence Mary Jo right here for Congress. And if you didn't know, I'm in super big trouble because we're 12 days till the election. So hopefully I've done my job and you've at least seen my name once. I am originally from Dallas, Texas, hence the cowboy boots. And I wear them because we do a lot of walking and they get rubbered very easily, and I can just replace the rubber on them instead of replacing shoes, and they're the most comfortable shoes you can wear. So if you're going to run for office, I recommend highly buy yourself a pair of cowboy boots. They are amazing. But so I came from a small business family. We had the seafood business for over 50 plus years, ever since I can remember as a baby. You know, all the way up, and I learned all the way. We had a wholesale and retail. My grandfather's dear friend was Fulton here on the East Coast. We bought seafood from all over both sides of the coast, and life was a lot different back then of how the seafood was treated, and we'll get to that in a minute. And I grew up learning how precious it was to have a family around all the time. I mean, just growing up in a family business was amazing, and I'm sure many of you have had that experience and you know exactly what I'm talking about. My grandparents, great-grandparents came from Sicily and Calabria, and they came in the right way through the Statue of Liberty and did all the right documentation and became citizens of the United States, and they came for that American dream and just gave us the most incredible memories, which is going to give me to you another story in a minute. That was wonderful. Was educated at SMU in Dallas, became a professional singer my sophomore year in college, where I traveled with many, many great shows, including Donald O'Connor, Eve Arden, Carol Channing. So I had an incredible career my entire life as a performer, never thinking that many years later I'd be standing here running for the United States Congress. In the professional theater, you have what's called the deputy, and I'm sure many of you have heard me tell this story. For those of you that don't know, you have a liaison between the production staff and the cast. So if there's a problem, every night that curtain must go up. So I would be that person that would have the problem solver. If there was a problem, we'd figure out the solution to make sure that curtain went up every night. You're probably thinking, what kind of a problem can you have? Well, you'd be quite surprised. The stairs could be dangerous. There could be, the stage is slippery. The ventilation's not working appropriately. If you're in a hazardous situation, they haven't checked all the equipment. So we're constantly making sure the safety of our company, as well as the theater and the audience, is perfectly as much as possible. So that was my job to do in many companies, and I just really loved being able to make sure that everyone was happy, because a lot of times when people are unhappy, they're not going to be willing to bend, and I would always make sure everyone walked away and they were happy, and that curtain went up and the audience never knew that there was anything else going on. So I had this great life, moved to New York City, met my husband, who was fantastic. We had 3 amazing children, 2 grandchildren, and moved up to upstate New York. Eventually I was told I should have always lived in New Jersey. All my friends lived in Jersey from the theater, and when I got here a few years later, they said it just took you 20 years to get here. And you know what? I'm so happy to be in New Jersey. It is the most beautiful, beautiful state. The people are wonderful, and I've just had the most incredible, incredible time. So how did I get to Congress? Well, I was asked if I would consider running for Congress last year, and in doing so, I spoke to my family, because, give applaud to all these candidates that are here, honestly. That anyone that does anything, it takes so much work, and every person that runs for office and their family dedicate many hours, and the children really are the ones. We are the meals kind of slack a little bit. The hours are amazing, insane a little bit, but it's worth it, because this year we're doing it to save our country, and that's why I'm running for Congress. That's why. But the second reason is, I promise you that I have one job to make sure I do on November 5th. And that job is, I personally, with your help, we are going to fire Josh Gottheimer from Congress. I'm not going to cut him down as a man because he's someone's father, he's someone's son, and I'm sure he's a wonderful friend. But I do not agree with his policies. Let me tell you what is really our differences. He thinks it's okay to leave the border open and to have illegals vote. I think it's very important that we close those borders and not have illegals vote. Right? Let's shut that border down. We're shutting that border down. He thinks it's okay that the economy is through the roof and that we are energy dependent. I think that it's not good that we can't afford our gas and our grocery bills and that we need to be energy independent and stop buying fuel from overseas where they tell us how much it is, and it's quite dirty oil, just to be clear. And we should be using our own resources here in the United States of America so we can bring down our inflation as much as we can through that. So I say energy independence all the way, all the way. Which brings me to my story in a second. I'll get to that story in a second. And let's go to the third thing. Josh feels it's okay that we don't respect our police. I'm so sorry. They got rid of ICE. They've gotten rid of, not allowing them to do their job, catch and release. I feel that our officers need to wear their badge proudly, have the support of the government, and do their job, lock everyone up that's an illegal, or, I should take that back, lock up if you have done something illegal, crime, let's be clear about that, and make sure the law is the law. We need to give them back the right to do their job immediately. So those are the three really important things, right? We're dealing with, number one, we know that if you look at how everything's been polled, it's been the inflation. Then it's the border, then it's crime. I feel that it's really the border, because the border is a domino effect that really encompasses everything. It encompasses everything. We're unloading prisons, as you know, from all over many countries. We have 170 countries that have come through these borders. So that's just been a mess. But I'm going to touch upon the energy for a moment. And I remember I told you I had a little story for you. So coming from the fish family, right, we know how important it is for those businesses, of those fishermen. So what are we doing in New Jersey having windmills in our ocean, which is destroying our sea life, our whales, our dolphins? And let's be very clear, those of you who have homes on those coasts, it's not very good for you, for your health either. They're knowing that it's starting to cause hearing issues. Your peace and serenity is gone because you're looking at these windmills. But think about the concrete that they have put down in that ocean floor. That can never really be reversed. They have destroyed the ocean floor. The blades are falling. It's not hurricane proof, to be very clear, those windmills. And they're already dropping, and we've yet to see a very serious hurricane right now come through. And they're already dropping, and we're seeing them right there on our ocean, coming, just floating onto our beaches. But what it's doing to the fishermen that are out there trying to do their job is not acceptable. So we're hurting many industries, tourism, the real estate, your serenity. So the windmills, they've got to go. They've got to go. Get out of Jersey. Go to where you need to go that's safe, but not in our ocean. They're gone. Gone. You can applaud. Absolutely. They have to go. So I'm going to take you to another story. So I'm on the phone probably 5-6 hours a day. No, 6 hours is stretching it, but I would take that as, when I'm speaking to you, that's kind of like being on the phone, because I'm making 100 phone calls right now, which is great. But it's much more personal. But I spoke to a gentleman yesterday. He was 95 years old. 95 years old. Thank goodness he was my last call of the day. Our call went 40 minutes. He had so much he needed to talk about. And it was brilliant. 30-year veteran in the Army. He had done special ops. He was a physician. He is well-written. He had so much that he wanted to share and had to really, I think, get off his chest. Very worried for our country. As we were speaking, I said, you know what? First of all, I'm going to write your name down, and God help you, because I'm going to win, and I'm going to be calling you. all the time because he was a wealth of knowledge, just a wealth of his experiences of what he has gone through. But I asked him a simple question, and many of us pretty much know the answer. What was the difference of that generation that had gone through, for him, he was very young for World War II, but the Korean War and the Vietnam War, and what did he feel was different now? And he said, very simple, it was education. Came down to education. He goes, when I was a child, we were taught to think. You're taught now to believe everything you hear. And silence at the phone, because he was exactly right. So I'm asking all of you, let's think about that, and let's tell everyone that little story. We must start telling people, think for yourself, and don't believe everything you hear, because they're trying to indoctrinate our children. They're trying to separate us, our families. They're trying to remove us out of our synagogues, our mosques, our churches. They're trying to isolate us. That's not the American way. The American way is that we're strong. Peace through strength. We respect human life. We've gotten numb on human life. Right. That's not acceptable anymore, right? We can't do that. When have we ever been so insensitive? We are a giving country. We are a loving country. We do everything. We want to welcome people from foreign lands to come and have that American dream. But guess what? Not 30 million of them now. We think it's 30 million, 25, 30. We keep hearing different numbers. It doesn't matter what the number is. They shouldn't have come illegally in, and we're paying for that. When have we taken care of our seniors, our veterans, and our homeless so well? During COVID, when many were having very difficult times. During the financial crisis. Remember the financial crisis? The real estate drop? Did we take care of anyone? Free health? Who wants free health insurance? Free. You pay nothing, right? Well, we're giving free health insurance. We're giving the cards that you can just have $15,000 on. I know this. I've seen it. We were down. We'd gone to the naval, runway there in Brooklyn, Lloyd Bennett Field. 6,000 in tents that are being housed. 2,000 units. Approximately 3 people per unit. That's constantly being rolled over. Clothed, fed, shelter, health insurance, education, all the things that we as Americans want to do for people that come to our country legally, but we're giving it away. And what has just happened in Boone, North Carolina, which is very personal to me because my husband's brother's family lives there, we don't have money to take care of the hurricane disaster that has just occurred because we have emptied our coffers. We can't do that. We can't do that. America first is so critical. And we're not going to be able to take care of anyone if we lose our country. Let me just be clear on that. We are this close. What did Ronald Reagan always say? We are one generation away. Well, I think we are one election right now away. And that's why it's so vitally important that we stand up peacefully and vote. And vote. I personally don't like war. I don't like war. I don't like people dying. And I know that our soldiers have had to lay down their lives for our freedom, for our right to vote, for everything that we stand for. Are we going to allow those many lives that are in these cemeteries of our veterans and of those who have given their lives and their families who have sacrificed, are we going to allow our freedom to be taken away for the blood that they shed for our freedom? No, we are not. I don't want that to happen. I don't want that to happen. So this is what I'm going to do, because I like to solve problems. I'm going to win on November 5th. That's the first thing. Remember, I need your help. Bill Billy is going to win on November 5th because he needs your help for those. Because we're going to tell everybody, call, pick up the phone, do whatever you have to do. Secondly, I'm not going to have an office in D.C. I'm going to have a conference room in D.C. I want a big table. And you are welcome to my table. Because that's how, I was a former mayor, I was a former trustee, which is like a councilwoman, and I sat on a county planning board. And solving problems is what it's all about. Sitting at a table with whoever wants to be there to help solve that problem, the experts, the individuals that are in touch with the community, that's how you get the job done. That's how you come up with the very best solutions. I had a dam in my community that hadn't been taken care of for over 10 years. It was out of compliance. I walked in and went, how can you have a dam out of compliance for 10 years? We'd just gone through the Arden Dam that had, remember Arden Dam during the Hurricane Irene? That burst, 2 billion gallons of water came down the Ramapo, came down through to the Passaic. We caused lots of damage. There was a little bit of an oil spill, not pretty. I asked everyone to sharpen their pencils. I interviewed all the engineers and everyone that was working on the project, figured out that they'd been having a great time for 10 years, and I changed how my table sat. I changed it. I brought in new engineers, I brought in new architects, I brought in some dam experts, and you know what? We got that dam shovel in the ground. In a year, that shovel went in the ground. We bonded it, we did everything we had to do, because maybe I worked a little bit too fast, but you know what? The regulations are too much sometimes. They slow us down. Our bills have too much garbage in them. I'm all for one-issue bills. If you want something done, have the issue in there. Let's get that solved. Let's get that passed. Let's get it tweaked if it needs to be tweaked and move on. How about that? When you make dinner, do you ask all your kids what do they want for dinner? You'll never get dinner made. Or do you just go, let's make this is what we're making. That's how we need to treat those bills. Not saying that they're like dinner, but you get my comparison here, right? Term limits. How about that? I don't need career politicians. Term limits are so necessary. I mean, we see what just happened in Billy's race. I'm sure Billy's going to touch a little bit on that. We need to have a constant, regeneration here. You know why? We're not allowing, Tim Walsh, brilliant mind. Mike Casey, who is a brilliant mind that many of you have met. Many of you in this room would probably be incredible assemblymen or senators or Congress one day. We need to make sure we turn that over and keep the ideas and the freshness and don't become stale, because you know what? They make it a career and they become not advocates anymore. So, and what are they doing? They're day trading. That's what my opponent is doing. He's making very well on the trades and stock. We can't have that. So, I think I've had my time. I just want to say thank you so, so much. I could talk to you forever. I've been to the border many times. We can talk about that later. I am so grateful that you've come. I cannot be more happy to be on the ticket with Donald Trump, with Curtis Bashaw, and have Billy as a partner in 5, because we call it working 9 to 5, if you know that musical. And we have an incredible slate in many of our municipalities of county commissioners, of local, of Board of Eds, of council. Am I missing anyone? Sheriff. Oh, we've got a great sheriff on the ticket. Have you ever seen such a great ticket? It's amazing. So let's fire up. Let's get the vote. And thank you, MaryJoForCongress.com. And that's with an FOR2. Thank you.
How do I follow up with that? How do I top what Mary Jo just said? Listen, so a lot of the things that Mary Jo has said, we are on the same page with a lot of things. But I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I see some new faces in the crowd. Some of you guys aren't aware of who I am. So 7 years ago, I channeled my inner Abe Lincoln. Let's start from the top. Speaking of this flag here, it was given to you by Ronald Reagan. If it wasn't for Ronald Reagan, I would not even be here. My parents, if you're not aware, my parents are from Ghana, West Africa. And in the late 70s, they decided to move to England. They wanted to start a better life, and they stayed there for quite some time. But their economy was not doing very good. It wasn't until they found out about this guy, Ronald Reagan, what he's doing, the movement that was happening in America, the resurgence. And my mom turned to my dad. It's the story she told me when I was really young. She turns to my dad and she says, why on earth are we still in England? Like, why don't we go to America? Right? My mother, she'd been previously married to an American. That's how she was an American citizen. Got married to my father. They decided to come to the United States. And a few years after that, I popped out. So thank you, Ronald Reagan. But the reason why my parents came here is because they saw opportunity. They saw a chance at prosperity, a chance to really follow through and live that American dream. And I've lived my life in this country for quite some time. And when I was growing up, a lot of my friends and family in my neighborhood, they used to call my house the embassy. I'm gonna tell you why. Because as I was growing up, throughout my life, we had 14 other relatives that came from Ghana. Many of them, it was almost like every other year there was a new person showing up, Every single one of them came in here legally. They didn't hop the border, just so you know. Every single one of these people came, and I'm like, wow, like we have a pretty big family. And my parents saw that in order for, they didn't just want to thrive themselves. They wanted our entire family to thrive. And while I was growing up in the city of Patterson, there were a lot of things that I didn't really pay much attention to. I remember seeing, well, I should say both of my opponents, because that's how long they've been in politics. I would see their names all over. I would see their signs promoting their campaign. At the time, my late opponent was the mayor. And I remember watching it and seeing how much nonsense was happening in my community, you know, drugs, violence, gangs, all that stuff, sadly, still going on to this day. And I never thought for once in a million years that I'd ever be involved in politics. But one thing I definitely knew that I wanted to do by the time I was 18 years old is I want to give back to the country that's given so much to my family. And I still, to this day, am an anti-war person. I don't like war, I don't like bloodshed, but who am I to talk about the troops? If I'm that guy, then I should actually go and step front and do what needs to be done. After all, this country's given so much to us. And I decided to serve in the United States Air Force when I was 18. I was stationed at RAF Milton Hall, United Kingdom. Lincoln Heath was a better base, by the way. His son had the good base. But when I came back home in 2011, I noticed that our country was not the country that I left. You know, Occupy Wall Street was going on at the time. The economy was failing. A lot of my friends were not able to find work. People were losing houses. My neighbors across the street losing their houses, businesses getting shut down. And I watched politics, paid attention to politics. I was the guy that was like known in the hood. Like if you want to know what's going on, go and ask Billy. Like Billy is the one who pays attention to these kinds of things. And up until that point, I thought I was a Democrat. I voted for Barack Obama the first time. Hope and change, black guy, why not? Everyone else is doing it. And the hope and change was a lie. When I came home and I saw that the American people could have been bailed out, but instead he bailed out the banks that caused this problem to begin with, I had to really start questioning my political perspective. And before I went into the Air Force, I had a friend in Glen Rock who introduced me to Ron Paul. And the first time that I heard Ron Paul speak, I was closed off to anything that he wanted to say. That's a Republican. These people are racist. I don't want to hear it. But upon coming home and seeing that the Democrats, who apparently were not racist, wrecked the country that I see here, I wanted to look into his policies and see what he was talking about. And he was one of the only politicians, even to this day, that I've seen that would talk about fiscal responsibility, the difference between Austrian economics and Keynesian economics, how the fractional reserve banking system works. Every single dollar we loan out must be paid back in interest. And that's leading to the inflation we're dealing with here in the United States. And I started to realize, maybe I'm not a Democrat. I think I'm a Republican. And I decided to register as a Republican back in 2011 or 2012, can't remember. I did. So I decided to get registered as a Republican. And even at that point, I still was not deeply politically involved. But then there was a guy who showed up and he decided to run for president. And all my life, I hated this guy. Why? I'm a poor black kid from the hood. I don't know anything about living in a golden tower or flying 740 jets and, you know, giant casinos. Like, I was not a fan of him. However, my father was a big fan of Donald Trump. And that's why I wish he was here today, because if he saw me right now, bro, he'd be one of the biggest campaigners. Swear down. He'd be one of the biggest campaigners, not just for my campaign, but for President Trump. He used to go down to the Trump Towers Mahwah just to hang out, just to bask in, this is what the American dream is all about. But in 2016, when he decided to run for office, there were a few things that President Trump said that at first I almost bit the propaganda. This guy's a racist, right? And I will never forget that day. I was watching a town hall with Donald Trump. I was watching with my mother, and he was talking about, correction, it wasn't a town hall, it was his announcement speech where he said, we're going to build the wall, we're going to build the wall. And the media, the CNN was saying, this guy's racist, he's this and that. I'm like, wow, isn't that a little bit racist? And my mom cut me off immediately. My mom does not do politics at all right? My mom's very religious, she only votes for Jesus Christ, that's it. She doesn't do that. And she's like, no, Billy, that's not racist at all. Your oldest cousin, when you were in the Air Force and he came, he had to wait 17 years before he became an American citizen. All the 14 relatives that came into this country, we spent a lot of money to get them here. We spent a lot of time for them to get here. They're all thriving, they're doing well. Why should somebody be able to walk across the border and get in scot-free and then we have to pay for it? And that really shifted my perspective, and that's not something I thought my mother would ever say. So I started listening to Trump a little bit more and hearing some of the things he's talking about. And you fast forward 4 years into his presidency, and I was very impressed with a lot of the things that he did, because this guy's no politician. He's a businessman. Wiped out ISIS in a matter of months, brought peace to the Middle East, made the Abraham Accords, peace between Israel and UAE. Jobs were coming back. Illegal immigration almost came down to a standstill. Nobody in the world wanted to mess with us. North Korea tried, and then he walked into their property and said, try it. And took a picture on top of that. And I was like, in 2020, and I voted for him in 2016, when he was on stage, and I think you guys probably remember this, when he was having the debate, and Hillary Clinton said, it's a good thing that Donald Trump is not in charge of that nuclear bomb. He's not in the White House. And he said, yeah, because he'll be in jail. And when he said that, I said, man, this guy's bold. I like that. You know what? I think I'm voting for this guy in 2016. So 2020 rolls around, and I decided to go down to the Trump rally in Wildwood, the first one, which was an insane experience. It was freezing cold that day. How are you, darling? It was freezing cold that day. People were waiting in the cold. People were there like 2 days in advance. And when I get down there, there's thousands of people. And I'm like, this is New Jersey? This place ain't blue. That's a lie. This ain't blue. Very, very Republican. And I was like, wow, Donald Trump was able to come to New Jersey and pull this off. And a friend of mine, also a former candidate for Congress, Hector Castillo, I went down there with him. He brought me down to the rally. And at the time, I didn't know him. It was a friend of mine from childhood who said, hey, go to the Trump rally, Dr. Castillo's going. I said, first time I met Dr. Castillo, we didn't say a word to each other the whole entire drive down, because we didn't know each other. I don't know the guy. But we walked around together, talked with people. I had a couple of interviews with random people. And there was one lady who came and put a microphone on my face, and we had a conversation. That video was recorded, and it turned out that was Kayleigh McEnany. At the time, she wasn't the press secretary for Trump. She was handling his social media or something at that time. And that video went insanely viral. Was not expecting that. Donald Trump retweeted that. He posted it online. And Dr. Castillo pulled me to the side a couple days, and he said, hey, Billy, I think you should run for Congress. If you guys know Castillo, he talks like that. So I think you should run for Congress. And I'm like, me? Now, I was a cell phone salesman at the time. I was working at Sprint. I sell phones, right? I know a lot about politics. I know about these things. Yeah, I'm a veteran, but what am I going to do in Washington, D.C.? Look at me, bro. I got dreadlocks. Like, I can't run for Congress. And he said, no, Billy, like everything you're talking about, the things you said on the microphone, the things you said in these interviews, the messages that you're talking about, you're a very eloquent speaker. I think you'd be great for Congress. I ran for Congress before. I know your opponent. I know how he operates. Billy, if you don't do it, who's going to do it? How long have you lived in Patterson? How many of your friends have gotten shot? How many of your friends have died? Do you want this community to continue to go down this way? What are you going to do, Billy? It's like, listen, what did your parents come here for? And he was raising a lot of very valid points. And I said, let me think about it. A couple days later, he said, Billy, if you think about it, come to my office. I'll help you get set up. And he did. I decided to run for office, and I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew that I had some good ideas, I got some good policies, and I decided to run. The Lincoln dinner of 2020, right? It was the first Lincoln dinner that I went to. And that was a pretty interesting experience because right after that dinner, I came home. Some of you guys saw the video, some of you guys haven't. I came home and my block was closed off. Caution tape, police all over the place. My neighbor just got shot in the head. And I'm like, what's going on here? 2020, we broke the violent crime records. 2021 broke the records of 2020. 2022 broke the records of 2021. 2022 is when it slowly started to peter out until eventually the Attorney General took over our police department, right? Which, thank God, because the leadership wasn't doing too good. But in that video, it was probably one of the only videos that I did where I was really angry in this video. And I'm talking directly to the people that are following me, Democrats, Republicans, whoever it is at the time. I say, why do we keep going Democrat? Why do we keep voting for this? Right? Is this benefiting us? Our roads are falling apart. Our schools are not great. People are dying. People are losing their family. People are losing their livelihoods. And we keep voting for this because there's a D in front of their name? It's nonsense. And I said, mark my words, I'm going to fix this problem, whatever it takes. Whatever it takes for me to do this, I'm going to make sure that this happens. Fast forward 5 years, I'm still running. And the gap is closing. And we're getting closer to victory. In 2020, we broke a record that I myself didn't even know we were going to be able to do. We got 31%. About 92,000 Republicans came out and voted for me. There hasn't been a turnout like that since 1983. Correction, 1984, when we last had a Republican congressperson here in the 9th District. And I said, all right, this is a guy who can bleed, right? He's not immortal. He's powerful, he's got the machine behind him, but I got myself. And I owe a lot of this to a man named Eli Mahwah. I don't know where he is, he's in the back somewhere. My campaign manager, there you go. My campaign manager, Eli Mahwah, and the thing that's, the reason why I owe a lot of it to him is because before, for about maybe the first 6 months of the campaign, it wasn't until about August or so where Eli came on board as a campaign manager. Up until that point, I'm doing everything myself. Videos, advertising, social media marketing, campaigning, giving speeches up and down the state, doing all this stuff. Eli thought I had a team. I'm like, nah, it's just me. And he said, wow, okay. And he said, listen, Billy, we have a couple of weeks until the election, right? We're not gonna win this election by doing videos. We have to run a guerrilla campaign. That's the only way we're gonna win this. We have to go grassroots. And that's something that I thought was very different, right? Because I said, what exactly do you mean by a guerrilla campaign? I said, we have to operate larger than we ourselves, we have to operate in a way where we're larger than people can perceive, right? You got a big personality, you got a big voice, your policies make sense. You need to show up everywhere. You need to be in everyone's place. You need to show up to events where the Democrats are at. You got to talk to the Democrats, started campaigning with the Trump hat in Patterson. No fear. And this is a wild time. Today you can walk around with a Trump hat, it's not a problem. Back then it was a different time. It's a different time. But I knew I had to be bold. So you fast forward to 2022, and we ran again. We got 44% of the vote, up from 31%. And in Bergen County, we won Bergen County on election day. And then, the paper ballots came in. We lost by 1,100 votes, which is still very small. I'd rather lose by like 50,000 than by like 1,000. That sucks, man. That's painful, And I said, all right, no, this man absolutely can bleed. We're going to run again. We're going to do it. This is the third and final time, but we're going to get it done this time. We were supposed to have a debate, me and my opponent. And he did accept it. Unfortunately, he passed away. Now, when this happened, it opened up a vacuum in politics. And I thought it was very interesting because just a few weeks before that, Joe Biden, who everyone knew had dementia, drops out of the race, and they replaced him with a DEI candidate, Kamala Harris. Nobody knows why they chose her. Nobody knows what she stands for, but hey, we need the first black woman. Go ahead and choose her. She's not black. She's like Indian. It's a lie. But we need to go and choose her to run. It's true. It's a lie. It's a lie. It's true. It's a lie. It's a lie. So I found it very funny that as soon as my opponent passed away, they had this process where they were all scrambling to try and replace him. And I thought that they were going to choose either, I'm not even going to name their names because we're not going to give them any airtime, but there were several candidates that they could have chosen. But they hand-selected Nellie Poe, which I found very interesting because that's a name that I saw since I was a child. And when Bill Pascrell was in the Assembly, and he got elected to Congress in 1997, they picked her up by the collar and placed her there, right? She got selected to be there. Never ran a serious primary, never ran against a serious contender as a Republican, and she stayed there for a long time. So now, they do the same thing in 2024, and I'm like, this is like a mirror of what's happening to Trump. It's like the same thing that's happening to me. We both have cool hair. We both got replaced by DEI. Both of our opponents got replaced by DEI candidates. I didn't get shot in the head, but in 2021 they shot at my house, is one thing. But I knew that in order for me to win this race, I have to outpace her. I need to be able to put my positions front and center because what exactly does she stand for? And not only was my previous opponent willing to take the debate, they had to take a debate. And here's another concept that my campaign manager talks about, and I think every politician should take this to heart as well too. We live in a bubble. All of us in this room, we're in a bubble. We're in a political bubble. We know what's going on within politics. The average person does not, right? And sometimes we think we got all the answers, but we really don't. The average person has no clue. She's not just running against me. She's running against 27 years of name recognition that my opponent has instilled in the Democratic Party for the past 27 years. So if we're gonna get her, if she's willing to debate us, it's because they see something in their bubble that we don't see. You don't ever debate your opponent if you're up, right? You gotta try and take that fire away. And she failed miserably. She failed. So during that debate, I was actually a little bit disappointed because I thought that she was gonna have much stronger policies, a much stronger stance, and she had none of these things. When they asked what her plan was for inflation, she gave a long-winded answer and filibustered and read a script. That's right, you remember, see? If you guys actually saw the debate, she read a script the entire time. And I called her out at least 4 or 5 times. Like, my opponent, she's getting handwritten scripts. The machine is giving her scripts. That's not your candidate. This is the party's candidate. They chose her. And I said, what's causing the inflation is the fact that we have tremendous spending in our country. We're spending money on stuff nobody wants to spend their money on. And the thing that upsets me is, I'm a young man. I'm 34, well 35, I forgot, I'm 35 now. But I'm 35 years old. I have to pay for that. My kids are gonna have to pay for that. Everyone's child's gonna have to pay for that. We're giving money to other countries and we're starting wars overseas. That means that we're gonna have to fight those wars if it ever kicks off and World War III happens, which means our children are gonna die in those wars. The president, well, Biden, the guy, cut off the oil leases, cut off the Keystone Pipeline. He's caused tremendous inflation, and when we have high fuel costs, the cost of doing business goes up as well too, right? And everybody feels it. She couldn't give a solid answer to this. When they asked her, will you deport everyone that's in this country illegally, without hesitating, I said, absolutely, without a doubt. Wanna know why? Because it's a slap in the face to me. It's a slap in the face to my parents. It's a slap in the face to every single one of the people in the United States that came to this country legally to experience the American dream. And if you're gonna sell out our future to people that don't even respect our laws, but if we went into their country and we violated their laws, you're getting shot, you're going to jail, right? Here in the United States, you get a plane ticket to Arizona, to New York, you can stay at the Roosevelt Hotel, 5 meals a day. These guys are walking around in Gucci. I can't afford Gucci. Where do you get the money for Gucci? It came from you. It came from the next generation. When my opponent was asked about what is your, do you support, or do you plan on putting a federal ban on abortion, or do you support women's rights? She filibustered about how much she wants to kill children, because that's what they're doing. They're killing kids. And in the state of New Jersey, there's no written breakdown as to when the limit is for abortion, which means you can have abortion up until the moment of birth. And rather than addressing that, she said, well, that's not what's happening. It doesn't matter. That's what the bill says. And you also help support this bill, so don't try and gaslight the American people, all right? Now, you want to talk about choice and pro-choice. The Democrat Party tells you you have a choice, but the truth is you only have 2 choices as a woman. You either eliminate that child, or you adopt that child. I offered a legitimate choice with my Sacred Life Plan. Sacred Life Plan goes like this. If our federal government, and as a Christian, I don't want my money going to abortion, but if that's what our federal government is doing, and this is here in the States, which I don't support, I have no purview over that. That's up to the people running for assembly to undo that. I hope we can get that done. If we're gonna give federal dollars to support abortion, I think that the United States is to give federal dollars to support life. And the way the Sacred Life Plan works is organizations like Oasis or Lighthouse or churches and charities, I think that they should receive funds to actually help women keep their children alive. If they need childcare, if they need diapers, why don't we do that? Because while the United States, we have the lowest birth rates we've ever seen in a very, very long time. And the solution is to import people who don't care about the values of the American people. And that's the solution. When in reality, why don't we resolve that problem and actually keep Americans alive? Keep children alive. Why, I don't understand the nonsense of that. Every single policy that I write, every single plan that I come up with, before I think of it, I think about what is the opponent going to say to shoot this down? How could they shoot this down, right? For example, I came up with the plan for term limits 8, 10, 12. The 8, 10, 12 plan. We already have term limits for the president, 8 years. Two terms of 4 years. Congress, 10 years. 5 2-year terms. Senate, 12 years. 2 6-year terms. You max out. The same goes for your staffers. And that's something that a lot of people don't talk about. There's a lot of snakes in Washington, D.C. People that are 40, 50 years old who've been there since they were 18. Now they're lobbyists, now they're living off the government, and they're making money in all different kinds of ways. If you come in and you work for a congressperson, or you work for the congressional office, you max out at 10 years, you go back home. Because the way our Constitution was written, it was written for the common person to get represented by common people, go to Washington, D.C. to represent them, and write legislation, and go back home and live under those same exact policies. It was not meant to be a retirement plan. And look at what happened with the late congressman, 27 years, passed away in the seat at 87 years old. He was responsible for writing legislation for my generation, for me, for my entire life, right? I think that the laws that are written for our country should represent the nation as it moves forward. And one of the things that I think is important about me running is I like to see young people getting involved in politics because I can't do this by myself. What a lot of young people forget is that we're the ones that are going to inherit this country. And we have no idea what we're doing. So I think we need young leadership to be in Washington, to be bold, number one, and not be afraid. I see a lot of politicians running away from the tough questions or dancing from their answers. There's people that are going to like my answers, there's people that are not going to like my answers. But one thing's for certain, they're going to respect my stance. And I think that if you're going to go to Washington, D.C., you cannot waver in your stance. Someone shouldn't come in, make a donation to your campaign, and hey, Billy, you got to go and do this instead, or play the game, or we're going to take you out. I think that's nonsense. A lot of you guys don't know this, but at one point I was homeless. When I came back from the Air Force, there's all kinds of nonsense going on. I was homeless for a little bit, and I noticed that there's a lot of things not being done for our homeless veterans. And I found that as an issue. I came up with a plan called the Heroes Redemption Plan. And every one of these policies, like I told you, I pulled them from my life. And there's a woman I met out in Lodi, in the fair the other day, and she helped me expand on this idea. We were having a conversation. I said, this is a brilliant plan. There's 340 defunct military bases across the United States. These bases have barracks, they have workshops, they have hospitals, they have facilities. We're spending billions of dollars on people that don't want to be here. Why don't we spend billions of dollars on the people that gave everything for the people to be here? The way that I think we can do that is we reactivate these bases, we allocate federal funds to reactivate these bases and use them specifically for getting homeless veterans back on their feet, teaching them job training, getting them transitionary housing, getting them the mental health care that they need, and get them back into society. It's the least that we can do, and there's no amount of money. That's one thing I got no problem with spending money on. That's our veterans. I think we should do that. If I'm gonna go and get shot at, and if people are gonna go and get shot at for it, we should do something for them. So the Heroes Redemption Plan will help get our veterans back on track. And speaking of war, like I mentioned to you guys, I am not a fan of war, right? A lot of the wars that our country has been in, we've poked bees nests all around the world. We've gotten involved in entanglements that we couldn't even get out of. Look what the Joe Biden administration did. Billions and billions of dollars, my entire life, spent on this war. in the Middle East. He pulled out, left billions of weapons. Gave $8 billion to Iran. Boom, Israel gets hit. Things that should have never happened. We need to stop throwing our money at these problems. So I created a plan called the Vote for Peace plan, and it goes very simple like this. If you, the American citizen, are the one that has to pay taxes to Washington, D.C., and I understand we have representatives that are supposed to represent us, this is the one thing I think Americans should make the decision on and not Congress. If I'm going to send my tax dollars to the federal government says we're going to give $117 billion to Ukraine, I don't care about Ukraine. And I'm sorry if that rubs people the wrong way. I'm running to represent the United States of America, not Ukraine. If I'm going to spend my money on that, if I'm going to spend the next generation's money on that, and war kicks off, it's our children that have to go and fight those wars. So in the event the United States is under attack, there's a terrorist attack, or under an imminent threat, that's the one time where this won't apply. In terms of giving aid, financing, anything to any nation, the American people need to make that decision. Before it goes to the president's desk, I think it needs to trigger a national referendum vote. And if the Americans want to give their money, even if I don't like it, the Americans want to give their money. It is what it is. Because I can't afford to be bankrupted. And I can't afford to watch more people die at my expense. Right? I'm all for peace. I think that we can get a lot of things done diplomatically, like in the examples I gave to you earlier today with North Korea and Donald Trump, for example. Diplomacy can solve a lot of problems. We have the biggest stick in the game. Nobody's got a stick like the United States. We're not afraid to swing it. That doesn't mean we have to swing it, right? Just the threat of the fact that we have that stick is more than enough to get people to the table and come to a solution that makes sense for everybody. Now, I lastly want to leave you with this, because this is an interesting fact. There are many countries all across the globe that have some form of voter ID. So I want to tell you something, right? In Ghana, where my parents live, right? Where my parents are from, for example. It doesn't matter if you're from the city or if you're in the villages. Everyone has voter ID. In the United States, voter ID is racist. Black people can't get ID. That's nonsense. You can get your driver's license mailed to you today. We already have the real ID system, and we're going to be moving into that as well, too. I think we should take it a step further. I think we should encrypt our voter information into these IDs, and it must be presented before you come out and vote. I'll take it a step further. Vote by mail ballots. We have no idea whether these ballots are being filed on your behalf or not. When you file your taxes electronically, what do they mail to you before you can file it? A PIN. They mail you that PIN, right? Now we're talking about your taxes here, all right? And the government wants the taxes. We're talking about your taxes here. Every single ballot should be encrypted to the individual. And if you're not familiar with blockchain technology, I think that our election system should be secured to the blockchain, which means once something is added and it's been recorded, it cannot be changed. And if it is changed, you can see at what time, who did it, and when it happened, and how it happened. And I think every single vote by mail ballot should have the same encryption. And before you send in that vote by mail ballot, you must have that PIN to send it in so we know that you sent that in and not somebody else. It's very simple to secure our elections, because in Ghana, if you don't have voter ID, let's say Chairman DiLorenzo and Mary Jo are both from Ghana, and Mahmoud wants to vote. He's in Ghana, but he doesn't have voter ID. Before Mahmoud can vote, Mary Jo and Chairman, they have to come to a court and swear to God that Mahmoud is a Ghanaian. They have to sign an affidavit and all that. If he's not, and you lied to us, all three of you are going to prison. We don't even have that in the United States. How can we not have a system like that? You know? It's not difficult to do something like this. There are a lot of solutions to our country that I think can be resolved practically, simply, and without spending a lot of money. And I think the only way we do that is by having forward-thinking people, having the next generation to come up with some of these ideas, i.e. Billy Prempeh, which means go to the polls November 5th and vote for Billy Prempeh, all right?
It's doing a great job. Bergen County is as strong as it's been and getting stronger. So I just want to say a few words to you about what we're doing and what the state really looks like right now. And I can give you the perspective from all the counties from south to north. It has been a wild, wild run over the past couple of years. as New Jersey recovered from not winning in 2021 and then losing seats in 2023. It sounded really bad for a while, but then we started to see some momentum at the grassroots. So we got a real gift. The Democrats have given us a gift. They went full on crazy. I mean, crazy. The gender stuff, the sexualized instruction in the classroom, high density housing. I'm sure many of you saw this phase 4 coming in. Every town, the average was 150 units a town. I mean, it's just unthinkable that there is an active, aggressive move to destroy the middle class in New Jersey and across America. And every year, everyone says, this is the most important election. This is really a little scary, what we're looking at with what the other side is saying they're going to do. They're not hiding it anymore. They're looking at laws in California that you could lose custody of your kid if you don't go along with your 8-year-old who wants to declare himself another gender. It's madness. I talk about my show, and a lot of you know, I had a show on Fox TV for a number of years called Chasing News. We're on Fox 5 in New York and Fox 29 in Philly, and it was interesting because the perspective you have from reporting the news, and then once you get into it, you realize how biased the news can be. And I've been on the radio now for the past 10 years, and I've got the #1 show in the state. I've got more than 1 million people that tune in to the station every day, and my audience is divided equally. And this is where the good news comes in. Divided equally between Democrats, Republicans, and unaffiliated independent voters. And that's significant because the numbers have only been growing. And since over the past couple of years, when I saw what was happening in 2021, and I want to address that for a moment. Many of you know I am also a candidate for governor in 2025. Thank you, but I'm not here tonight as a candidate for governor. I'm here as a patriot. I'm here as a citizen. I'm here as a New Jerseyan. And I'm here as a guy that can give you the perspective of what's happening across this state. People are angry. People are fed up. And they're looking for a home. The Democrats are looking for a home. We've got to give it to them as Republicans. And unfortunately, we go through a lot of infighting in our party, and it hurts us. Because while the Democrats are saying, get in line, we're going this way, Republicans will kill each other over a county committee seat. We have to get smart. We got to get tough. But we also have to deliver on principle. We cannot be the party that tells people what they want to hear. We have to be the party that leads. And I'll give you a couple examples. In Florida, when Ron DeSantis got elected governor, I'm sure we have a few Ron DeSantis fans here. Ron DeSantis got elected in a blue state. You wouldn't know that now. Got elected in a blue state by a couple of thousand votes. And what did he do? He bucked the trend. He went against what the media was saying. He went against what the political pundits were saying, went against what the consultants were saying, and he led. And he led Florida through the lockdowns, onto the other side, and performed better than just about any state in the union when it came to saving lives, protecting businesses, protecting kids and teachers in the school system. He did that with a Democratic majority when it came to voter registration, and he flipped it. And he took that 3,000 vote, plus or minus win, and turned it into a 1 million vote re-election. That's how you move a state. And now there are more Republicans than Democrats in the state of Florida. That is now, it's a solid red state. It took leadership. We need that kind of leadership. Now, when we saw what was happening, remember 2021, there were 2 elections in this country that mattered statewide. Governor's election in Virginia and one in New Jersey. In Virginia, you may know the guy, Glenn Youngkin, became the governor of Virginia. Right? Great guy. We didn't win in New Jersey. There was one big difference. And I'm not going to get into the candidates and the messaging and the issues, as this is not a campaign stop for me, but I will tell you this. In Virginia, 6 out of 10 voters turned out to vote, and Youngkin won. In New Jersey, 6 out of 10 stayed home. Now think about that for a minute when you think about what we're up against coming into this presidential election and these races for Congress. Don't give up. And don't listen to the media telling you it's a 2-to-1 advantage of the Democrats. Registration doesn't matter. What matters is what's in people's hearts and minds. What matters is what they want, and I can tell you from the calls every day, there's no buffer between me and the audience. And I've been listening for the last 10 years with the #1 show in the state, and I can tell you that most people who call the station call to tell me when they're leaving. So think about that for a minute. They call me to tell me when they're leaving. And what backs up that is the United Van Line survey. You've probably seen it now 5 years in a row. 7 out of 10 moves are out of New Jersey, not in. We have the highest out migration of any state in the country. Between 21 and 22, we lost $3.5 billion in adjusted gross income. What does that mean? Taxable income moving out of the state. And what does that mean for the rest of us? Our taxes go up. I can tell you my taxes haven't gone down. My wife Jody is here. We live in Princeton. And the taxes are out of control. My taxes are up 20% over the last couple of years. My auto insurance went from $5,000, I'm paying $6,100 a year for auto insurance. It's outrageous. So when you think about how we as Republicans appeal and why are people moving instead of voting, we got to give them something to stand on. We got to give them the strength and the courage and the vision. We've got to say bold things. We've got to stand with President Trump on ending the sanctuary state in New Jersey. We've got to stand with President Trump on the deportations and getting us back to normal. We've got to push back against the agenda of this governor and these radical left-wing members of Congress in New Jersey who side with the squad. When you think about how New Jersey's not a radical state. At best, we're purple, and most of our Democrats are moderate. But the Democrats here have been hijacked by the Attorney General Matt Platkin. They've been hijacked by the radical governor and his wife that have an agenda to twist our education away from math and reading and history and instead create a cesspool of propaganda. And we've got to push back against that. I can tell you, it's the old saying, if you build it, they will come. If we stick to our principles, and what are they? They're simple. We want to protect law and order in our communities. We want our kids to have a great education, and we want to make sure parents are in charge and involved in that education. We want to make sure New Jersey is a place you can start a small business and succeed. We want to make sure New Jersey actually has government departments that, believe it or not, function. They function in other states. And we want to get our debt under control. And that can all happen. But it starts here in 2024. And I'll give you a quick story because I want to turn it over to my friend Alex, who is with Moms for Liberty, a great organization, by the way. Give her a hand before I do it. Moms for Liberty has been in the fight. But people say that maybe New Jersey should be written off. Most people are leaving. Let me tell you, I'm not going anywhere. And I know you're not going anywhere. But it gets down to a point where you've got to be ready to fight. There's no one coming to save us. There's no white knight coming in. Look, I'm supporting President Trump. I know you're supporting President Trump, but it's more than that. We have to fix this state and this country from the ground up. Your council members matter. Your mayor matters. Your members of Congress matter. And the race that these two are running is incredible. I see them everywhere. It's hard to keep up with them. But that's because they understand it's not about hiding behind consultants and mailers and advertising. It's about bringing the message to the people, energizing people, and getting them out to vote, getting them out to knock on doors. Right? That's what this is all about. Look, I've been doing this a long time. And I can tell you that you go back 4 or 5 years, this room would have had 15 people in it. Now we're seeing rooms like this, 60, 70, 80, 100 people in every stop, and we're doing 5 a day. And it's all over. It's from Cape May County to Sussex County to Hunterdon to Middlesex to Bergen to Monmouth and Ocean. It's everywhere. Why? There's an energy. And the energy you can see, and I'll tell you a quick story. Who was in Wildwood when President Trump was here? All right, a couple of us, right? So some of you, if you listen to the show, know that President Trump came on the air ahead of the Wildwood event. And Jody and I had this great opportunity to meet with him backstage before his speech. And, you know, President Trump is an interesting man, and you hear his speeches and you see him, and he'll go on, as you know, for sometimes 90 minutes, 2 hours. I won't do that to you tonight. But you're hanging on every word, and you know that this man is sincere and in this fight. So here we are in New Jersey. And despite what the media wants you to believe, there were at least 80,000 people there, probably more, definitely 100 when you count all the people that lined the streets to see his motorcade come in once he flew in. So it was packed, and many of us were there for 6, 7, 8 hours waiting for the president. So we get backstage, and for one surreal moment, it's just me, my wife Jody, and President Trump. So Jody goes up to him, sticks out her hand, and he sticks out his hand, and they have this arm grab, and she said, "Mr. President, you have got to be thrilled to see how many New Jerseyans turned out to show you they love you." Now, if you've met President Trump, he's a serious guy. He's a big guy, and he's a serious guy. He kind of broke character for that moment, and he crouched down, and he grabbed my wife's hand, and he said, I know. Do you see all the people? I tell you that story because President Donald Trump is energized, and he's real. He feels every bit of the barbs and the attacks on him, his family, his businesses, his integrity. He is constantly under attack. I have never met nor seen a candidate or a president or a former president under the kind of fire that this man is under. Yet he perseveres. Yet he marches on. He rises to the occasion. He steps up and says, this country is worth it, and I'm going to fight for her. And he does that knowing the risks. He could be on a golf course for the rest of his life and not worry about any of this. But instead, he's fighting for us. The least we can do is fight for him. And the way we fight for him is not only get out there and vote, early voting. If you got to vote in person, early vote. Don't be afraid to mail in your vote. They track it. You can watch it online. I've been voting by mail for 10 years. We've got to vote. We have to overcome the perception that your vote doesn't count. And don't entertain the argument when they say they cheat. Say, yes, we know they've been cheating since the 1800s. There's never been an election where somebody didn't cheat. You got to overcome the cheat by turning out to vote.